So yeah, I'm presenting to you here from the lands of the Jara people in central Victoria. Uh, yeah, so I was lucky to visit um, a DIY shipping container just the other day and was amazed to see that a 46-foot container could be fitted out in a homely nature like this for just $20,000. So yeah, what we need is access to land and some reasonable planning regulations, and we could look after ourselves. It's always the access to land that is the key point. Next. So Grounded, we've been around for a couple of years. Um, yeah, we've recently done a whole pile of work looking at the role of Airbnb. If you want to go back a slide, Bill, there we go. Um, Yeah, so we've done a whole pile of work looking at the rampant change pushed upon communities through Airbnb, and the answer to that problem, of course, is to accelerate the development of community land trusts to deliver resilient housing in our communities. If only there was a way we could channel some of the incredible profits that are being delivered by Airbnbs that see the earnings at 80% greater than what they can get in long-term rental, we would have a nice funding stream for more community land trusts. So trying to bring some innovation into the space and push government to think about turning problems into solutions. Next slide. So our current housing story sees investors buying up properties, and each time that property is sold, the profits leave the community, and in time, locals are displaced when they can't afford to buy or rent. And of course, the community land trust story is one where the resident owns the home. There's a resale formula that keeps a cap on prices. Deposits and mortgage repayments are reduced significantly. And over time, once the project costs of that land trust development are paid down, these regular payments go back to the community rather than being lost from the community. And that's one of the key advantages of community land trusts, is that we can close this loop between housing payments and the benefits received. Let's keep those benefits within our community. Next one. So the core CLT concept is that the resident only has to borrow for the house while the trust owns the land. When you look at land and housing prices, it's really the value of land that is going through the roof. Sure, we've had some construction cost pressures of recent, but over the long run, it's that locational value that increases over time. And if we were all supposedly born onto this planet as equals, then each generation should get equal access to the land. And the best way to do that is to share that rising value of land back with the community. Next one. So for CLTs, why are we so passionate about them? Because you only have to borrow for the house. Most valuations see that the land component is around about 60% of every mortgage. So if we don't have to borrow for the land, that also means we have a 60% lower deposit rate. And that deposit gap is massive now, where in many communities we need over $130,000 plus just as a deposit. And as some of us will be able to remember, it wasn't that long ago that a house was costing around $200,000 all up. So, yeah, we've gone through some incredible change over the last 24, 25 years since that capital gains tax discount was introduced. The other big advantage of CLTs is that we can deliver perpetual affordability. That is what we want. We know that setting up any sort of co-op or CLT takes a lot of time and effort, let's ensure that this housing benefits future generations and not just one generation of owners. That's one of the big problems with the government's Help to Buy scheme, is that it's just a one buyer wonder, and then that public subsidy is lost and government has to start over again. That's why CLTs are so useful, because in a way they become a self-funding vehicle. And yeah, once those project costs are paid down, and what we've looked at in the Northern Hemisphere, prior to the Community Land Trust movement, which has now clocked up 50 years of history in America, there was a concept called land colonies. And these land colonies paid off their debts in 10, 15 years. And one of them in particular became known as a beautiful nudist art colony. But it didn't actually do anything to help expand the base for affordable housing. So whenever we're working with community groups, we're trying to seed that concept that to have as one of your constitutional objects, that you want to expand the base for affordable housing so that it doesn't become an enclave where you're just looking inwards, you're looking outwards and trying to help the wider community and to really establish that community resilience. One of the other things I love about CLTs is that this is locally accountable supply. We have local board members rather than some anonymous corporate structure. You can bump into a board member anywhere and hear about how the housing construction is being rolled out. My past work writing about staged releasing in master planned communities showed just how powerful the role of drip feeding supply is. Well, with community land trusts and the community ethos embedded in the whole process, that supply is rolled out quickly to help as many people as possible, rather than slowly drip fed for great profit. Thanks, Bill. So the affordability lock, I like to call it. This is for the classic CLT model. And at resale, there's an exit fee, which is akin to a capital gains like tax of somewhere between 50 to 75% of the gains. The resale price is limited to the growth in incomes. That's a powerful medium to really keep in check the growth of prices so that people aren't spending more than 30% of the area median income on somewhere to live. And importantly, residents are prioritised to have a local link to the community through either their family life or having worked in the area for 3 to 5 years. So those sort of aspects, alongside the intentional nature of a community land trust, means that there's a smaller pool of buyers who have to have a lawyer, ideally, sign the contract of sale with them, that they've had independent legal advice saying that buying into a community land trust is all about the common ethos rather than the profiteering sort of nature of open market real estate. So the governance model is really important with CLTs, and yeah, we try and use this tripart governance model to ensure that residents can't take over the board. And so we have a split of 1/3 residents, 1/3 neighbours, and 1/3 civic-minded individuals, whether that's retired MPs, councillors, or academics. And that's primarily set up so that residents can't vote down the affordability measures. That's a really important aspect if we're trying to ensure perpetual affordability lasts into the future. because as we know, it's often that third generation who comes along who sees that they could be sitting on a golden goose there and try to hack away at the intentions of the original founders. So very important to have that in place. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. So how do CLTs acquire land? Ideally, it's a donation via council, perhaps government. What we're finding is that many councils have sold off a lot of the crown jewels, same with state governments. So that is a bit of a pressure point. Great to see, though, that many councils here in Victoria are employing housing and homelessness advisors, officers within council, and they're being under pressure to do an audit of their land holdings. So if you're ever talking to your local councillors, ask if they've done an audit of publicly owned land, and that will help reveal some of those aspects. Here in Victoria, churches now have to pay land taxes, so they're much more open to using some of their vacant land. Yeah, there's a potential there for leasehold, and we're doing some advocacy work with state government looking at that as well, because yeah, there is a lot of vacant publicly owned land despite the sell-offs, and it's great that you know, these audits are sort of flowing through from state government downwards. But yeah, one of the key points is that if you are going to buy land, to make sure that you do it at the right time in the property cycle. Try to avoid as much debt as possible. It's a hard aspect to deny, though. Often when property prices are the highest, there's the greatest housing stress out there in the community, and so people want to do something about it. But yeah, going into multi-million-dollar debts is going to hamper your project in the long run. So see what you can do to avoid that. So supporting community, how do we do this? At Grounded, we have a You Can Book Me page where we're receiving at least a couple of inquiries a month from either landholders or the community wanting to do things in the affordable housing space using the community land trust model. We ask them to fill out a simple survey so we can hit the ground running. And yeah, we just do a 30-minute sort of meet and greet, figure out what the agenda is and how we can work together, and then set in place a series of regular meetings trying to help that group get up onto the runway with land in mind. So yesterday I met with the amazing Seaford Housing Affordability Collective, and they've been around for over 10 years working on the front line with homeless people around the Frankston area, where there's something like 97 rooming homes. I was staggered to hear how many there were. But yeah, there's some government land coming up for sale in the area, and it's a lot of commercial rooming homes making a lot of money out of it, and barely any not-for-profit rooming houses there. So yeah, how do we try and find a way to use this perpetual ownership model under the CLT model to help groups like that? In Australia, the Byron Shire Community Land Trust has recently been announced. This is likely the first community land trust in the country. It's a rental focused model, so we can have an ownership-based model or a rental-based model, and this one has a focus on assisting people escaping domestic violence and so forth. So yeah, check out the Byron Shire Community Land Trust. Great website there, and there's a committed team who've been working on that for quite some time. So be very interesting to see how that turns out. So the emerging opportunities, well, land prices are just so damn high. More and more people are being locked out of housing, and it's virtually failing middle class Australia, and that's what drives me mad that the Albanese government still rolls out this treadmill economics approach of help to buy, build to rent, of basically creating some housing supply, but throwing that petrol on the fire, if you like, and prices are only going to moderate or increase. There's no talk about actually bringing land prices back to the long-term relationship to wages that is urgently required. At Grounded, we've been looking at these missing moderates, moderate income earners who still struggle to save up that $120,000 to $200,000 deposit. How can we help some of them get out of the rental market and clear the rental market up a bit for those who really need it? So yeah, looking at a mix between these missing moderates and affordable housing. One of the big problems we have in housing is that there's a lack of community agency. Community don't really know what to do. We've seen the environmental movement be really effective at their campaigning. Housing hasn't got there yet. Is that going to be a future trajectory to really shake government into action? The Victorian cost of the big house build, I've been tracking the costs there, and for every social and affordable home they're producing, it's costing around about $550,000. So, the cost is just too damn high. How many consultants are getting in there? Something's going wrong when you can see a DIY shipping container for 20 grand versus these immense costs that government forks out. And, as this pressure keeps building, it's just so scary to see the role of AI and this commodification of housing through build to rent and other forms of commodification. Unfortunately, that's where the big money's going, and so it's really going to become this battle between community and private equity, and that's why we need more and more people switching on to the role of CLTs and how co-ops can help. Any sort of community-led housing is important. So the barriers, the Housing Australia Future Fund is limited to larger players and larger size projects, similar with the Victorian Affordable Housing Investment Partnership. So much paperwork and bureaucracy, it's really hard to get in there. There's sort of an alliance between social housing builders that, you can't, smaller players can't get into council meetings. We're hearing more and more of. And then, of course, there's, the familiarity of the CLT concept and the work we need to do there. So, yeah, we're talking about the need for quality supply rather than quantity. All this sprawl, all this concrete delivered by master plan developers, drip fed at ever and ever higher prices. We'd do better for affordability if we had more CLTs and co-ops coming through with the really strong community outcomes that drive these movements. So yeah, the whole concept of a land trust and what would happen if we held that land over generations. Imagine the things we could build the wisdom we would gather over time and how we could look after ourselves if only we had some land that was affordable, that had a long-term approach to it. And that's what we will need in the future. And when you think about our freedoms, the right to affordable shelter must be the front line of what we call freedom. So thank you for that, Bill.